The Peloponnesian War was not merely a clash of armies. It was a struggle for dominance between two great ways of life. Athens, the naval and cultural power of Greece, and Sparta, the land-based military giant of the Peloponnese. So when exactly did these two titans collide? And what were the causes of this long and bitter conflict? Well, let's go back to the early years of the war, from 431 to 421 BCE, often called the Archidamian War. By the mid-5th century BCE, the Greek city-states were a collection of independent republics, each with its own government and laws. But they all shared a common identity as Greek and had close cultural ties. The most prominent city-state was Athens, situated in Attica, a small region on the eastern shore of the Aegean Sea. Athens had grown rich and powerful after defeating the Persians and leading the Delian League, an alliance of Greek states formed to continue fighting against the Persian Empire after the Persian invasion of Greece in the late 5th century. The Delos League treasury was brimming with tribute money extracted from subject states. Athens used this revenue to build a strong navy and expand trade across the Mediterranean. Its citizens enjoyed more freedom and political participation than any other state in Greece. Athens became a center of art and philosophy, attracting scholars and thinkers from all over the Hellenic world. But this very success alarmed Sparta and its allies, particularly Corinth and Megara. Sparta was a small militaristic state in the Peloponnese, dominated by two powerful kings and an assembly of elders known as the Gerousia. It had little use for Athens' cultural achievements or democratic institutions. To Sparta, Athens' growing power and influence seemed like a threat. Soon minor conflicts in the western Mediterranean erupted into full-scale crises, such as the disputes over the island of Melos and the control of the important commercial city of Megara. The 3-year-long Megarian decree closed off Megara from Athenian markets, causing serious economic hardship for the Megarians. As relations grew worse, the fragile peace shattered. In 431 BCE, Sparta declared war on Athens, kicking off the Peloponnesian War. The first decade of the war was known as the Archidamian War, named after the Spartan king Archidamus II, who led the war effort. Sparta's strategy was simple: invade Attica every year and devastate the countryside, forcing Athens to keep its army at home to defend the city instead of joining the allies at sea. Athens could not risk losing its navy to Spartan land forces, so it kept its troops behind the long walls, which connected Athens with its port of Piraeus and enclosed the whole city. Thus, Athens spent most of the war confined within its walls, a tactic that proved costly because the Peloponnesian allies could easily blockade the city and prevent food and supplies from entering. For Athens, only the sea remained open. There they could strike blows against the Peloponnesians, harassing their coastline and projecting their power to distant Thera and the coast of Asia Minor. But raids and skirmishes at sea were not enough. Athens desperately wanted to end the stalemate and defeat Sparta decisively. Meanwhile, Sparta felt confident about its position. King Archidamus hoped that Athens would soon tire of the war and sue for peace, and that most of the allies would revolt and join the Peloponnesian side. For 7 long years, this strategy worked well. Each year, the Spartans devastated Attica, but each time they left without a major engagement. The Athenians suffered greatly, but they endured. They rationed their food supplies, turned to farming within the city walls, and still managed to keep up a large navy. They also fought back on the seas, intercepting grain ships bound for Laconia and devastating the northern Peloponnese. In 429 BCE, a plague struck Athens, killing nearly a third of the city's population, including Pericles, the brilliant statesman considered the father of Athenian democracy. His death weakened the political class and demoralized the populace, but Athens still fought on. Then in 427 BCE, the Argives defeated the Spartans at the Battle of Mantinea, giving the Spartans pause before invading Attica again. The next year, however, a Corinthian seized the Acropolis of Athens and razed it to the ground. Now even more determined to end the stalemate, Athens launched a major offensive. Their plan consisted of sending a large fleet to Sicily to reinforce their ally Lentine, while others would sail to the Peloponnese to ravage the coast. The Corinthians sent a messenger to Sparta asking for aid. King Agis and the ephors decided to take advantage of this opportunity to end the war quickly. A large Spartan army crossed the Isthmus and marched north to meet the Athenian invaders. The result was the Battle of Sphacteria, a pivotal moment in the early years of the war. The Athenian navy, commanded by the brothers Demosthenes and Nicomacheus, surprised the Peloponnesian army and trapped them in the narrow pass of the Eurotas River. The Peloponnesians were forced to retreat into the sea, where they were picked off by Athenian triremes. Only a handful escaped. But there was a problem. Among the captured Peloponnesians were 286 Helots, Helot soldiers who had accompanied the army. They refused to surrender and starved themselves rather than submit to Athenian mercy. These brave Spartans would rather die than surrender. After considering his options, Demosthenes devised a daring plan. He ordered his men to dig tunnels under the Spartan fortifications, secretly releasing the captive Helots, who then ran into the night and hid in the mountains. Then the Athenians offered the Spartans honorable terms of surrender and released them with gifts and honors. This humiliating episode spread throughout Greece, shocking the Spartans and inspiring the Athenians. Even the neutral states marveled at the capture of Spartan soldiers and the magnanimity shown to them. Demosthenes was honored as a hero, and Athens had its first major victory. But could this be the turning point in the war? Would the Peloponnesians sue for peace? You might think so, but you'd be wrong. Both sides were too proud to back down. The peace negotiations failed, and the war continued for another 4 years. During this period, the fighting grew more intense. In 425 BCE, an Athenian expeditionary force captured the island of Melos, killing or enslaving all adult males. Then a peace negotiation between Athens and Sparta broke down, and the fighting returned to normal. The Spartans kept invading Attica while Athens kept blockading the Peloponnese. However, there were now more allies on each side. The Argive tyrant Thucydides convinced most of central Greece to join the Peloponnesian side, while the Corinthians brought in more allies from the west. The balance of power was shifting away from Athens. King Archidamus was ready to risk one last invasion of Attica in 424 BCE, but during the winter, he died of illness and was replaced by his son, the young and inexperienced Aegospotami. The ephors, the 5-man executive body of Sparta, were now worried that Aegospotami was not ready to be king, so they sent the old and experienced king Aegeus to lead the war effort. Yet, in spite of the change of leadership, the Archidamian War ended in 421 BCE, with the Peace of Nicias. Nicias was the chief magistrate of Athens at the time, and played the lead role in ending the war. He negotiated with the Spartan king, probably with the help of an Athenian diplomat named Cleon, who had opposed the war from the beginning. The treaty allowed both sides to return to the status quo, antebellum. All captured territory was returned and prisoners were freed. But the peace was uneasy. The Peloponnesian allies were angry that their demands were not met. Corcyra, Thebes, and Melos seceded from the Delian League, and the Corinthians demanded compensation for losses during the war. As Cleon pointed out, though, this meant nothing if Athens didn't have the money to pay them. The peace held for 6 years, but small conflicts continued to ignite, keeping the two sides on edge. So there we have it. After 10 years of bitter fighting, the Peloponnesian War was still inconclusive. The two rivals were exhausted, but neither would back down. In 421 BCE, the two sides signed the Peace of Nicias, hoping to end the bloodshed. The so-called peace did not last long. In 415 BCE, Athens embarked on the Sicilian Expedition, one of the most ambitious military ventures in ancient history. Encouraged by the brilliant but controversial leader Alcibiades, Athens sent a massive fleet and thousands of troops to conquer Syracuse in Sicily. But almost everything went wrong. Alcibiades defected to Sparta, Syracuse resisted fiercely, and reinforcements arrived too late. By 413 BCE, the Athenian force was utterly destroyed, ships sunk, soldiers killed or enslaved. This catastrophe shook Athens to its core. Sparta seized the opportunity. With Persian gold, Sparta built a powerful navy under the leadership of Lysander, something previously unthinkable. Athens, weakened by the Sicilian disaster, struggled to maintain its empire. Internal divisions grew, and democracy was briefly overthrown by an oligarchy in 411 BCE, though later restored. The final blow came in 405 BCE at the Battle of Aegospotami, where the Spartan fleet destroyed the last of Athens' navy. With no food or supplies entering the city, Athens was starved into surrender. In 404 BCE, the long walls were torn down, its empire dismantled, and Sparta imposed an oligarchic government known as the 30 Tyrants. The aftermath was grim. Though Sparta had won, it too was weakened by years of war and corruption. The balance of Greek power was shattered. Athens would revive culturally but never regain its empire. Many historians believe this war marked the beginning of the decline of classical Greece. The philosopher Socrates, who lived through the conflict, later faced trial and execution in a city scarred by war. The Peloponnesian War was not just about Athens and Sparta. It was about human ambition, fear, greed, and the fragile nature of power. It reminds us that even the greatest civilizations can fall when unity is lost. As Thucydides, the historian of the war, wrote, "What made war inevitable was the growth of Athenian power, and the fear which this caused in Sparta. That fear, ambition, and rivalry shaped the destiny of Greece forever." Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a recap of the entire Peloponnesian War from 431 to 404 BCE, including the social and cultural impacts of this terrible conflict. If you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. Alright, let's get started. To understand the Peloponnesian War, we have to go back to the last episode where we left off. After the Persian Wars, there were two main powers in Greece, Sparta and Athens. Sparta was land-based with a strong army, and Athens was sea-based with a powerful navy. Also, after the war, there were some tensions between the two, because Athens had been disobedient during the war. They refused to return some of the booty they took from Persia, and they also occupied islands that really did not belong to them, so this created some bad feelings between the two. And then there was the whole debate over whether or not Athens had committed hubris by becoming so powerful. Anyway, all these tensions led to the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, so we are going to divide the war into 3 periods: the Archidamian War, the Sicilian Interlude, and the Trireme War. So let us begin with the Archidamian War, named for the Spartan king, Archidamus II, who was the leader of the Peloponnesian League. During this period, Sparta attempted to invade Attica several times, but Athens' strong navy kept them out. Also, even though Sparta had the stronger army, they were unwilling to lay a siege to Athens, because that would have meant they'd have to stay in Attica and defeat the Athenian navy once and for all. For their part, the Athenians chose not to risk any major battles with the Spartans and instead harassed their allies. So this stalemate continued until 421 BCE, when the Peace of Nicaea ended the first period, but this peace was short-lived. As soon as Sparta got some breathing room, they began to stir again. In 418 BCE, the Spartans helped Thebes capture the important Isthmus of Corinth, cutting off more of Athens' trade. And then in 417 BCE, they supported the rebellious Mytilenean islanders. This might have been Athens' greatest blunder of the war. You see, Mytilene was a subject of Athens, but it was very rich and didn't like paying tribute. When Mytilene revolted, Athens sent a naval force to punish them, but they were defeated and Mytilene became independent. Then, in 416 BCE, Athens sent an expedition to Sicily to help the rebelling city of Lentine, but it failed and they lost 50 ships and 4,000 men. Meanwhile, Alcibiades, one of Athens' leading generals, was recalled from Sicily for his failure, and he went to Sparta to make a deal. He promised the Spartans how to build ships that were superior to the triremes the Athenians used, and then he switched sides. Now that the Athenians had lost their best general to the enemy, it was only a matter of time before Syracuse joined the Spartans. But as they prepared for the coming Spartan invasion, the Athenians deposed Cleon and replaced him with Nicias, a man who wanted to end the war. In 415 BCE, Nicias signed a 5-year treaty with Sparta, but it fell apart when both sides continued to support rebels in each other's territories. And now we come to the darkest period of the war. See, Athens had lost 100 ships and 1,000 men at the hands of the Syracusans, so they decided to double down and send reinforcements to recapture the city. But the Athenians got absolutely crushed. The entire force was wiped out and another 4,000 Athenian soldiers were captured and enslaved. Back in Athens, people were growing tired of the war, but Cleon's nephew, Demosthenes, whipped them up into another frenzy by blaming Nicias for the defeat and calling for revenge. So Athens sailed another fleet to Sicily with more disastrous results. Of the 160 ships that sailed to Sicily, 80 were lost and 7,000 Athenian soldiers were killed. This defeat utterly devastated Athens and they had to call off the campaign and return home. And as if things couldn't get any worse, the plague struck the city again, killing 1/3 of the population. Now that Athens was utterly drained, Sparta pushed its attack with a full invasion of Attica, but this is where Sparta kind of shot itself in the foot because they laid siege to the city of Delium, which was defended by only 1,000 Athenian soldiers. The Spartans thought this would be an easy victory, but their 3,000 soldiers were ambushed and nearly annihilated. So Athens was saved, but it was clear that neither side could achieve a decisive victory. And so in 420 BCE, a truce was called, and negotiations began. The Spartans agreed to lift the siege of Delia, and the Athenians agreed to stop interfering with the Peloponnesians. But just like the last peace treaty, this one did not last long. In 413 BCE, the Holy League, which was a band of Peloponnesian and non-Greek peoples, invaded Thrace, but Athens helped Thrace fight them off. Then Athens and Persia went to war, but Persia won. So Athens asked for help and received 100 Spartan ships. Then after this, the Spartans broke their alliance with the Persians and attacked the Chians. Then they went to war with the Egyptians. So what I'm trying to say is nothing happened. And as the war dragged on, both sides suffered greatly and neither could afford to keep sending troops into battle. So finally in 404 BCE, the Spartans trapped the entire Athenian fleet in Aegospotami, and without any hope of relief, Athens surrendered. Sparta's victory was decisive, but it wasn't really, Athens was forced to abandon its empire and tear down the long walls. But Sparta had lost 80% of its population, and Athens still had 80,000 fighting men. But despite all the bloodshed, there was a sort of justice in Sparta's victory. Sparta had kept true to its conservative values throughout the war, and Athens had strayed from its democratic ideals. Oh, and also, it turns out Sparta was right. Athens' hubris had brought them low. So that's nice. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Do not forget to like and subscribe.